The thing about this is where I hate to give you the consultant answer of it depends, but it does depend. And here's why. Business value is such a generic term, it can vary, right? So I'll give you an example. In an e-commerce company, you can have a concept like a RICE score. You can Google this stuff after the session also. RICE stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. It's a way of prioritizing your user engagement or your customer adoption. Now that's a very, very e-commerce business focused metric that you want to track, right? Now, a financial services company might be looking at something else. A loan origination system being developed by a mortgage company might be looking at CSAT scores or net promoter scores and things like that. So it really depends on what your success parameters are as a business. And that can be very domain specific. In general, I'd say some things to consider from a value would be, first of all, the importance versus urgency. Right? How urgent is this versus how important it is? And having some sort of a grid. So high, low, high, those permutations and combinations of urgency versus importance, right? That can give you a good guardrail of when to do this versus that from a timing perspective. The second one is your risk. So how do you do some risk dispositioning in your system? Like, what does risk mean? Is it risk of revenue, which is growth, right? Or is it risk of profit? Or is it the opportunity cost? Or is it the cost of delay? Like, opportunity cost is basically what am I willing to let go of? And I'm willing to, incur the cost of that opportunity. And I'm okay with that. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's the cost of delay. That means I'm not going to ignore this forever. I'm just going to say right now, it's not the right time for it. So I'll put it in the back pocket. I'll come back to it later. But me putting this in the back pocket costs me something. It'll cost me a set of customers, or it'll cost me a set of dollar amount and things like that. So that's a cost of delaying me not working on that. And so these parameters, like I could go on forever. Like these are different parameters you can look at for valuing business value, for example, right? A good resource, because I don't know if we'll get through all of this in the office hours, but a good resource would be following this person. I put in a chat window. His name is Ashwath Damodaran. So Ashwath Damodaran is a professor at the Stern School of Business, and his specialty is product valuation and pricing. And he talks a lot about business value in general. So I would say go on YouTube, look this guy up. He has a bunch of lectures online. He's also spoken at Google a bunch of times. So check out his stuff. I'm sure you will get some metrics there. No, I wouldn't say business value has anything to do with your story point. So a story point, the thing about attaching value to story points, that's a very dicey conversation to have, because a point at the end of the day is an individual subjective interpretation of how difficult they think something is. So your definition of a point and my definition of a point can be very different over time. And so what you will end up with is if you start to scale this concept across 10 teams and 20 teams and 30 teams, then you end up in a situation where you will have to normalize these points in order to get an objective view on value. That's why I'm recommending that you don't attach value from a business standpoint to a point which represents complexity of work, because that correlation does not scale beyond a certain point. It might be good for a team, but when you scale at our 200 team level, 300 team level, it might not work out. So I'd say business value is more that you would rely on the product owner working with the stakeholders to figure out what the success parameters are. And then what you can do over time is if you find categories of work, then you can say this category of work is these many business points or something like that, right? But correlating that with the delivery points is probably not a good idea, because that can change over time. So I can definitely give you my opinion about SAFe, but feedback for you would be a very loaded question, because you and I have never worked together. So I don't really know the tactical problems you're facing, but I'll give you some context on SAFe in general. I've worked in SAFe environments, scaled Agile framework. It's a way of scaling Agile practices. It is easy to do SAFe wrong, because like you said, there's a lot of structure that SAFe brings in terms of, dedicated cadences of things, dedicated processes. To a certain degree, if your organization is not set up the way SAFe prescribes it, then there can be some overhead. There's also a certain degree of normalization that exists in SAFe, which doesn't take into account the subjective nature of work across tech stacks or across systems or across businesses, if you will. So combining all of that stuff into, say, one release train or one value stream sometimes can be a little tricky. Your best bet at this point, I'd say, without us getting into a rat hole of this, would be to talk to your Agile coach. Okay, so release train engineers are more like coordinators who will be like scrum masters across multiple teams, because they are managing the coordination of the release train, if you will, or the art. You want to be your Agile coaches. who can help you understand certain basic things like why are we subscribing to the cadence of this art, or why are we part of this value stream, or how do we manage dependencies from this team versus that team, how do we set about synchronization points, what kind of engineering practices do we need. So depending on what kind of coaching you need, whether it's process coaching, engineering coaching, or business or product management coaching, I would say engage with those folks. They will be your best bet. If you don't have those agile coaches, then look for anybody in the company who's championing the agenda for agile. There should be some sort of an agile center of excellence. Tap that person on the shoulder and say, boss, we need some help here. So help us understand why you're setting these processes, because some of these don't fit with our delivery model. Some of these don't make sense to us. Can you help us understand what is driving the commonality of these processes across these teams? So I'd say start with that. If you go on the SAFE website in general, there's a lot of prescription. So if there are questions about the concept as such, you can go to the website and they have a whole bunch of information out. Everything you need to know about SAFE is on that website. But if you want to learn about SAFE from a book, maybe check out Dean Leffingwell's work. But Dean Leffingwell is the founder of SAFE. But if you want to, at this point, if you want to optimize for money, I'd say that look at the website. They have a lot of information on the website.